You're listening to the Talkin' Boxing with Billy C show. Glad you could join us. And don't forget about our website, www.billycboxing.com, where you can find all the latest news and stories and all that happy stuff. And you can also get a copy of my book right from there. I got to throw that in. You can check out our book club section up on billycboxing.com and get a copy of my book, Tom Molyneux, From Bondage to Baddest Man on the Planet. I sign it any way you like it. If you don't need it signed, just right now, go up to Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com and get your copy right now, especially if you want it in time for the holidays. Well, joining me right now is my main man, Daxx Khan. What's up, Dax?
What is going on? I am here. I have arrived. The ladies are starting to listen and tune in.
Is this Dax or is this like some crank caller? Because I know Dax wouldn't think like that, you know. But
of course I think like that.
Oh, okay, all right. But we got some fights this weekend that you want to talk about, and actually, I don't even know which ones you're going to pick. So enlighten me, my man.
I was thinking, you know what? These three fights are in the three baddest divisions right now, Bill. They have the baddest men in all of boxing in it, and the losers of all three of these fights are still relevant, which is something we haven't had in a very long time. You know, we have the great card this weekend over at the Turning Stone. Over there is going to be. Whoa, 1 second here.
We got a lot of big fights up at the Turning Stone. It's a great card, to be honest with you, and I can't wait to see it. Starting with
absolutely. It's going to be the
Nicholas Walters, the Luis Ortiz, Junius Gonzalez, and now they also added Gamboa, right?
Yes. You know what? I'm sorry, I got a little shell shocked. I'm sitting here with my computer. You know, sometimes you hover over something real quick,
and you know,
all of a sudden,
and you know who else? You know who's fighting Gamboa is Highland Williams, who's actually I'm 99.999% sure he's out of Albany, isn't he? Used to
Highland
be.
Williams, yeah.
He used to be, and then he moved to Georgia to go to school. He's a smart kid. He used to train with Sammy Bunch. He's in for an ass beating this weekend. But which fights are you going to be watching, bro?
All right, and anyway, yeah, like I said, my little stutter thing right there was, sometimes you have your things hovering over something, and all of a sudden it does something when you don't want it to, and I had it hovering on something else, and my whole page disappeared on me.
Oh.
Yeah, so we, the two fights over there, was going to be the Luis Ortiz versus Brian Jennings fight, and then the light heavyweight fight on that card is the Vyacheslav Shabransky against Uniseki Gonzalez. And then over in England, we're going to do Andy Lee against Billy Joe Saunders, and we're going to go in that exact order.
Sounds good, bro. So
all right.
Let's get us going.
Let's start off at the Turning Stone. This is an interim WBA title fight. How these WBA titles keep popping up is beyond me. But, Brian Jennings, red hot prospect. I know you're big on him. I'm big on him. Everybody is. His only loss is to Vladimir Klitschko. It was a very close fight. He gave Klitschko a lot of problems and kind of told us what was next in his career. For Klitschko, meaning the pros on him is he's fast, he's mobile, and despite only having 10 O's, he has deceptive power. He derailed 3 undefeated prospects, meaning fighters with no losses, more than 10 bouts. Maurice Burnham, Arthur Spilka, Mike Perez, and Spilka himself has a WBC title fight coming up in January. Jennings has a solid chin, a long reach, and he utilizes that reach to the fullest. He's certainly been in with tough opponents. Only Vladimir Klitschko was able to beat him on the cards, as I stated, and Jennings gave him all he can handle, prior to the conclusion. The cons on him is while he's shown a solid chin to the punches he's ever taken, we've never seen him get hit in we've never seen him get hit more than once because he is so mobile. Brian Jennings never takes more than one punch at a time. Klitschko beat him because Klitschko was so much bigger than him and was able to manhandle him. This weekend Jennings is going to, go against the guy who's going to maul him, is going to give him a lot of shots. Luis Ortiz, is another guy with a long reach, 6'4". He had a great amateur career, over 300 wins, yet for some reason he never made it to the very top level in terms of competition. He never made it past the Cuban national status. When somebody has over 300 fights and they don't make the the Olympic team and you're from Cuba, makes me wonder about them a little bit. The pros on him is he's a strong fighter. He applies tons of pressure. He trains at the legendary Fifth Street Gym in Miami, so he has some great minds of the sport to be around, ones who have helped him make the transition from the amateur to the professional ranks. Cons on him is he leans in with his punches. He swings wide. He's easy to counter. Standing 6'4", he slouches a lot. He doesn't fight like a 6'4" fighter. He brings his defense in tight. He kind of hunches over, and he just stands there, making it easy for a fighter to come around those elbows and land to the body, something I think Brian Jennings is going to be able to do. He obviously has power, as his record shows, but that is also a bit misleading. If you look at his fight against Latif Coyote, Bill, he had Latif Coyote pinned on the ropes, letting his hands go, but he never really hurt Latif. The problem with that is I think Latif was stopped because he was standing there trying to weather the storm, and that, gave the referee no choice but, to assume that he was hurt. Luis Ortiz reminds me a lot of Samuel Peter. A lot of badass on the surface, but you know what? Looking deep inside, I really don't see much there. Funny how I use Peter as a reference to Ortiz. Ortiz is the Cuban who KO'd the guy from Nigeria, and that's exactly where Samuel Peters hails from. Official pick here is Brian Jennings. I think he's going to have an easy time in this fight unless somehow Ortiz is able to catch him with a big punch if Jennings makes a mistake, but I don't think so. Brian Jennings, in my opinion, is 2, maybe 3 classes above Luis Ortiz in quality.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think that the only knock on Jennings really is his size, Dax, because Brian Jennings is one of the best conditioned fighters at any weight class out there. He started late. He seems to be getting better and better. He's accurate. When people ask me about him, I always describe him as a cross between when Michael Spinks was fighting at heavyweight and Evander Holyfield. That's the way I look at him. As far as Luis Ortiz goes, I'm not overly impressed, even though I got to see him and call an early fight of his. He's been coddled. Brian Jennings clearly has fought the better opposition. Like you, I thought he would have had a much better chance fighting Vladimir Klitschko, beating Klitschko if he would have fought the way he did the last couple of rounds. I'm with you. I'm picking Jennings in this one.
All right, the next one over on that card, Bill, is going to be the light heavyweight fight, and that is going to be between Uniseki Gonzalez, and he's going to be taking on the Ukrainian fighter, Vyacheslav Shabransky. I'm sitting there trying to figure out how to pronounce that guy's name, but that's hard. Vyacheslav Shabransky. Shabransky is, he had a great amateur career. He didn't make it to the Olympics, but he was on the Ukraine national team for quite a long time. So he also has experience in the World Series of Fighting. So he's a much more seasoned fighter than his 14-0 record implies. Shabransky, he's fought up into the 190s. That was in his first few fights, though. He's continued to drop weight, and in his last 8, he stayed about the same, give or take, between 172 and 176 pounds. The pros on him is he's a relaxed fighter. He knows his way around the ring, and he cuts it off well. He has serious power, especially that right hand. He doesn't even need to throw it from a distance. He lets it go short, and guys go down when he hits them. He's been very active. He fights about once every 3 months. He reminds me very much of an Artur Beterbiev, except he's a little more compact with his shots, not as wide open, and he has good head movements. He goes side to side. He ducks undershots. Being compared to Beterbiev in terms of punching power, that's a very good compliment. The cons on him is a little unsure what style he favors. He doesn't know if he wants to be a puncher, a boxer, or a boxer-puncher. We've seen him in all those roles. Once he makes up his mind, I think, he's going to be a serious force to reckon with. The guy across from him, Uniseki Gonzalez, he's coming off a very questionable loss to Jean Pascal. The pros on him, he's physically imposing, he throws his punches with bad intentions, and he knows how to walk an opponent down. He applies constant pressure. The cons on him is he's lazy at times. He keeps his left very low. He also does not like the fast pace. When he throws these big, wide, looping punches. While they have bad intentions, they're easy to counter. His right hand is his biggest weapon, and when he throws it, it's more of a clubbing fashion instead of proper extension. He doesn't get the maximum power out of his shots. He's also a bit too muscle-bound, in my opinion. He can afford to lose some bulk. I can see him fighting at a middleweight if he trimmed down a bit. Gonzalez has fought as high as 190 pounds as well. But you know what? He hasn't really fought anybody of note other than Pascal. My official pick here is going to be Vyacheslav Shabransky. Too much power for the wide-open style of Gonzalez. He knows how to set the pace. Once Gonzalez tastes his power, he's not going to be so quick to walk in like he did against Jean Pascal. Just watch. We're going to have another Eastern European right here on the scene that everybody's going to fear, and he's going to be right up there with the Arthur Beterbiev, Sergey Kovalev, and Gennady Golovkins of the sport.
Wow. I'm sold on Yuniesky Gonzalez, and I think this is going to be a really good fight. But I'm going against you on this one, my man. I'm going to take Gonzalez. I think that he's going to win this fight, but we'll have to wait and see. It is what it is, man. And I love this card. But I like when we don't pick the exact same fights, because you know what that tells me? That tells me it's going to be a good fight. When everybody picks the same side all the time, that's a predictable fight. So good stuff, man. Now the last one is probably going to be a real good one too, huh? With the Andy Lee Billy Joe Saunders fight.
Absolutely, with Andy Lee and Billy Joe Saunders. Over in Manchester. This is going to be a Frank Lawrence Queensberry promotion card. This is going to be Lee's second defense of the WBA title. Matter of fact, it's just 6 days past the year since winning it from Matt Korobov last year. Andy Lee, 31 years old. He's had 2 losses. He's been stopped in both, but he also has an elite amateur background. He lost to Gennady Golovkin. He represented Ireland in the Olympics as an amateur on the world level. He has wins over Marco Antonio Parabon, Ismail Salah, Alfredo Angulo. He was actually eliminated in the Olympic Games by Hassan Najakim on a countback, meaning Lee was first scored the winner. That was when in the Athens Games. The pros on Andy Lee is level of competition. Win or lose, Andy has been in with tough competition. He's a quality boxer who knows what to expect from every opponent. Andy has a solid jab and a left hook. Man, what a left hook does Andy have. It bails him out of more than his fair share of tough moments. In fact, it actually won him a world title. Andy is tall, and he stands tall. He uses his height to its fullest. He gets maximum leverage on all his punches, and he doesn't waste too many shots either. The cons on Andy is his chin has always been a question. Andy Lee has been down a fair amount of times. He's gotten back up, but he's also been down. Against punches maybe he shouldn't have been. Against John Jackson, he was down in the first. Against Quillen, he was down in the third, meaning that, Andy Lee is very vulnerable early. When he lost against Brian Vera, the problem was Andy kind of ran out of steam. Manuel Stewart kind of worked and fixed a lot of those issues. And you can see that now with Andy Lee. Billy Joe Saunders across from him. Billy Joe, too, was an Olympian in the 2008 Beijing Games, but as a welterweight. He lost in his second fight. He really hasn't beaten anyone as an amateur. The pros on Billy Joe is a quality, well-rounded fighter who himself has a good jab, always improving with ring generalship. Billy Joe is a patient fighter who does not get overzealous. In fact, he was supposed to be a coming-out party for Chris Eubank Jr. Instead, Billy Joe was the spoiler. The cons on Billy Joe is the level of competition. Chris Eubank Jr. is his best opponent to date. Who's Eubank really beaten? Chris Eubank Jr. this weekend beat Spike O'Sullivan. Guess what? Billy Joe beat Spike 2 years ago. Billy Joe's never been tested. We don't know how he reacts when he gets caught hard on the chin. And if something is going to happen in this fight, he's going to look good, but he's going to get caught on the chin. I'm going to have to go with the champion, Andy Lee, here. Even if Andy's losing, once he hits that left hand, he's going to put Billy Joe Saunders down.
Andy Lee is such a hard guy to figure out because depending upon the referee, and I don't know if you're going to agree with me, but depending upon the referee could really determine the outcome for this fight, because if a referee doesn't give Andy Lee the benefit of the doubt, like you mentioned, the guy's been down a bunch of times. He gets up, and that's when he seems to be the most dangerous. If you get a quick stopping referee in there, this fight could be over. The question is does Billy Joe Saunders have that one-punch knockout power? I'm going with who you're taking Andy Lee, right?
I got to go with the champion. Like I said, he's going to have a few shaky moments, but, Andy Lee's going to pull ahead on this one. I have to go with him simply because Billy Joe Saunders has never been in the type of situation Andy Lee can put him in, and anything Billy Joe has to offer, Andy's been in quite a few times, and he's bounced back from it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like Andy Lee. Although every time when I say he's going to win, he loses. When I say he's going to lose, he wins. So hopefully I'm not jinxing him. But I'm with you on that. I'm taking Andy Lee myself.
I'm laughing at you because over the years, I think we've talked about this before. There's been about 5 fighters that just in the past 6 or 7 years, that every time I have interviewed them before a fight, they've gone on to lose. And, just when I'm doing the interview, they're sitting there saying, you know what, I'm going to win, and I'm sure they're going to win. Andy Lee was one of those guys against Brian Vera. The other one, Holly Holm, before her first fight with Anne-Sophie Matisse. Holly Holm sat there and told me, I'm never going to lose again in my career. And Holly got, knocked out that night pretty brutally. I'm hoping it doesn't happen this weekend. I seem to be a little bit of bad luck myself.
Well, I'm with you on that, on the pick anyway. So good job, as usual, with your fight breakdowns. And before we let you go, I want to get your thoughts on some of the fights this weekend. First and foremost, Anthony Joshua knocks out Dylan White in the 7th round. Does that make things a little more clearer, in your opinion, for two things? A, Anthony Joshua's talent level, and B, the heavyweight division in general. What's your thoughts on, now the repercussions of his knockout win? Not just a win, a knockout win over Dylan White.
Well, make no mistake, Dillian White is a quality fighter.
I know.
Started late in his career, but Dillian White is a quality fighter, kind of like Tyson Fury. He knows how to sell a fight. Dillian will tell you himself. He says a lot of things just to sell a fight. But Anthony Joshua, this is the first time we actually had to see him overcome a little adversity, Bill. He was eating some big punches, and he adjusted. And the way he finished Dillian White, who has a great chin, the punches Dillian White was taking. And what I was really impressed with is the fact that Anthony Joshua, because Dillian White wasn't going away as quickly as past opponents, Anthony wasn't getting reckless. You see a lot of young guys do that when all of a sudden, the guy in front of them isn't going his way as easily as they thought they were. They start doubting themselves. Anthony Joshua didn't do that. He was very composed. As you stated earlier in the show, he's accurate with his punches. So in my opinion, all that says is, you know what? Anthony Joshua had grown up a little bit more, and he's ready to take on that next tier of fighters. And in a few years, considering the company he's kept, especially the time he spent with Vladimir Klitschko, that's telling me Anthony Joshua is ready to arrive very soon as the man to take over that division. The only other guy I would like to see him in against around his age and with that power level is the kid from down under, not down over in New Zealand, Joseph Parker. A fight between those two would be, a barn buster.
Yeah, it seems like that now that Dillian White is out of the picture, it seems like those two are on a crash course as well. Another fight I wanted to ask you your thoughts about was Omar Figueroa can't make weight. I mean, this is his second fight in a row that he couldn't make weight. They end up making this a junior middleweight fight against Antonio DeMarco, who's known for being a lightweight. He was a former lightweight champion. He fought at junior welter. And although Figueroa looked really good in this fight, Dax, DeMarco looked better than he had been in years. I was sitting there watching this fight, and I'm going, oh, my God, is this going to be another one of these come-from-behind knockouts? What was your quick thoughts on that fight?
If you remember, if I'm not mistaken, that was originally supposed to be a junior welterweight fight. And then they decided to make it a welterweight fight. And then about a week before the fight, at the insistence on Figueroa's team, they decided, to do a catch weight of 152 pounds, I believe it was. And the night that they were in there fighting, they were middleweights. I have to question here, Omar Figueroa, even though he had a high punch output, which he's always had, and that's been his bread and butter, obviously the power wasn't there. So, if he doesn't, if he doesn't, get himself a little bit more disciplined, his career isn't going to end well, because these guys at welterweight and junior middleweight, so to speak, or especially, gosh forbid, he had to go to middleweight. These are big punchers. Antonio DeMarco, after taking all those shots, he was hurting Omar late. So there's a lot of work to be done with Omar Figueroa. He has a lot of talent. Like you stated with Antonio DeMarco, I was saying on our social media feed, this kind of reminded me a lot of the Antonio DeMarco against Jorge Linares fight, where Linares was just dominating him, letting him go with a lot of shots that whole fight, and then those last two rounds, DeMarco let his hands go and ended up stopping Linares. And I think if Antonio DeMarco would have let his hands go one round sooner, he'd have knocked Omar Figueroa out, because at the end of that fight, Figueroa looked a lot worse for the wear.
Yeah, he did, and you're right. If he can't get disciplined, I mean, he's a young kid, and I could see he just looked very big and healthy, but taking big shots. DeMarco can punch, but not like a legitimate middleweight. So you're right. Chris Arreola Is it time for him to? Obviously, he's going to get another shot. But this guy is nothing. I mean, he was never a super talented guy, but he seems to have lost even what he had. I mean, no disrespect to Travis Kaufman, but Travis Kaufman shouldn't have given Chris Arreola much trouble. What's your thoughts on that, real quick?
Yeah, I think we spoke about that. I can't remember if it was on the show last week or just between us, or saying about what Vitaly Klitschko took out of Chris Arreola. I remember after that fight, I was talking about we could use a champion like Chris Arreola who's willing to fight anybody, and he lays it all out in there, win or lose. When he fought Thomas Adamek, that right there told me that he was pretty much done. And everywhere after that, you can see Chris Arreola has never fought anybody of that level again. Berman Stavern, pretty much had his way with him on both fights. His best win since then has been Seth Mitchell, and I personally thought Fred Cathy won that fight. If Chris Arreola is getting dropped like that by Travis Kaufman, who's a decent fighter, but this is probably the biggest step up of Travis's career ever since the Tony Grano fight. Chris Arreola, I don't think he has the desire anymore. Either that or he just doesn't have the physical ability to absorb those punches anymore. His next fight is going to definitely tell us whether or not Chris Arreola is nothing more than a gatekeeper, or maybe Chris Arreola should just hang him up. It wasn't even that hard of a punch that dropped him.
No, he's going for one more payday. That's it. Nonito Donaire against Cesar Juarez, fight of the year candidate in my opinion, man. What were your thoughts?
Absolutely, an exciting fight. Nothing about that fight wasn't exciting, huh? Donaire. I'm always a big fan of Donaire. I like the guy, and he's a heck of a nice guy to talk to. But he should have dominated that fight. Not that Cesar Juarez is any walkover by any means. Don't get me wrong, but in terms of ability, he should have been able to dominate that fight. Juarez pretty much almost did what his stablemate did a couple weeks ago to Amir Imam, huh? Just came in there as the underdog and just using pure pressure and work rate, almost gave the upset to Donaire. I think Donaire needs to do a little bit more soul searching and think to himself exactly, how much do I really want this anymore? Because I can't be getting into wars like this. Wars like that are going to shorten your career. Donaire, in my opinion, 122 still might be a little bit big for him. I remember sitting at Gleason's before his fight with Omar Narvaez, and I remember Donaire talking about he was going to capture titles all the way up to welterweight. Looking at that fight right there, at 122 pounds, especially after what happened with Nicholas Walters, he might want to get down to 115 again because he's ripe for another fall. He has all the tools, but I don't think he has the desire anymore, regardless of how much heart he showed that night.
Yeah, I just don't think he's got the defense. He's 100% a counterpuncher. That's it. He can't instigate the action. But Roy Jones,
much like Roy Jones, huh?
Well, Roy Jones Jr. against Enzio Macronelli, a guy that we all think that he shouldn't have been fighting anyway. We all thought. He's got nothing to prove. He's, fighting all these, not even journeymen. I mean, less than that. And he gets in the fight with Enzio Macronelli. I'm not sure what he was thinking. I mean, I know Mac has had some rough times, getting knocked out himself. But Enzio Macronelli came into this fight in shape. Roy Jones looked like he didn't do anything. I mean, he just didn't look like he had any type of conditioning or anything, and a brutal knockout, face down. What's your thoughts, man?
Enzo Mac's a decent fighter. He always has been. I think he's a little bit with a little bit better trainer. I think Enzo would have went a lot further. Absolutely 100% correct on the chin issue. And for a while, I myself was saying Enzo Mac is a guy who's ripe for a disaster. But he's kind of reinvented himself here. Roy Jones Jr. just needs to give it up, man. It's bad enough to get knocked out, but when you're getting knocked out cold like that, that's the scary part. Getting knocked out is one thing, but knocked out cold like that. And in terms of what I was referencing to on, just the counterpunching ability, Roy Jones was a great athlete. I've always said it. I'm not the only one. Roy Jones was never a great boxer. There is a difference. A great athlete, because his reflexes, his skill, is able to, to pull that trigger so fast is what made him great, made him so exciting, and allowed him to be so successful. Once those things left him, it's natural to erode on any fighter. You have to have the plan B. I was talking about it this weekend. I mentioned it in the chat room tonight. That was the difference between Roy Jones and Bernard Hopkins. 1993, you'd have never figured out, Bill, or guessed this is how they were going to end. Bernard became an all-around fighter. Roy Jones never did. Roy Jones's mind can't say, I got to hang it up. And somebody's going to hang it up for him. And you know what? It's sad to see. It's we see it with so many all-time greats. The difference is so many of those guys hung around because they needed the money. Roy doesn't need the money. He has himself a good gig broadcasting. He should just hang it up. The whole thing going overseas, the fight over there is just, it's about ego. Somebody needs to save Roy Jones from Roy Jones, or he's going to end up a tragedy. In 10 years, 15 years, we're going to be at the Hall of Fame, and you know what? Roy Jones is going to be one of the guys. He's slurring. He's walking around. He's looking, to stay relevant. People are going to be asking for autographs. As they're walking away, they're going to be shaking your head, talking about, wow, how sad. Remember when he was great? Look at him now.
Yeah, great points. Dax, great job as usual, and I appreciate your thoughts on those fights, and we'll look forward to you on Friday, my man.
Absolutely. Speak to you all soon. Have a good week.
That's Daxx Khan. You can check out his column up on BillyCBoxing.com. One thing I want to mention before we go to break here, and we're scheduled to have the author of a great book that's out now, The Phantom Punch. You can get a copy of it in our book club section, Rob Sneeden. I just want to talk about the WBC and the middleweight situation. Now, the WBC was very adamant about the fight. Triple G won their interim belt. They were very adamant about the winner of the Canelo Alvarez Miguel Cotto fight. Alvarez won that fight. They gave him 15 days to negotiate. Then they extended it. Well, now today they gave an official announcement that says the following: both Alvarez and Triple G shall be entitled to make voluntary defenses of their corresponding championships so as to maximize the interest on their highly anticipated showdown. A 15-day free negotiation period will be ordered on the completion of the earlier of the voluntary defenses or May 31st. Whichever comes first. If there's no agreement, then a purse bid will be conducted under the WBC rules and regulations. If after their corresponding voluntary defenses, one boxer is unable to fight for the other for the undisputed WBC middleweight championship, then the unable fighter will lose his status as champion or interim champion, and the fighter that was able will be named the WBC undisputed world champion. Here's the thing. I think it's crazy. This fight should be taking place now. I get it. They both want to make a fight. They both want to make some more money, especially Canelo Alvarez. But the main issue here that I have is they haven't addressed the weight issue. And according to Saul Canelo Alvarez, he wants to fight at 155. And, I just believe that a middleweight title, the fighters should be able to fight to the middleweight limit, especially if it's a world title fight. So we'll have to keep our eyes posted on that. Triple G against Saul Canelo Alvarez, the fight that we want to see in the middleweight division. And then the winner of that fight, can we pray to see them fight Daniel Jacobs? And then maybe the winner of the Andy Lee, Billy Joe Saunders fight? I mean, can we actually think that we may end up, believe it or not, with a unified world middleweight champion? I would love it. We got some good talent in this division. They need to fight each other.
Talking about